When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when the wedding was scheduled, Lena, his wife, looked straight at me with a cold smile and said, "Oh, we tied the knot yesterday. Only the truly important people were there." Those words hit me harder than a slap. Truly important people. 3 years of paying their $500 monthly rent. 3 years of furnishing their home, stocking their fridge, helping them through every crisis. And I wasn't one of those important people. I stood frozen in my own living room, gripping the phone like it weighed a ton, while my son refused to meet my eyes. Lena, meanwhile, had made herself comfortable on the couch I'd paid for. In my closet hung a pale pink dress I had carefully chosen just for their big day, useless now. Alongside it, brand new shoes and a broken dream, the illusion of sharing in the most meaningful day of my only child's life. That dress cost me $200. I had imagined standing next to Max in his wedding photos, smiling, proud. But now, I wouldn't even be in the background. I had been planning for weeks. I set aside $1,000 to gift them for their new life together. I called my sister Diana in Chicago, bursting with excitement, sharing the good news. I cleaned every corner of my house, expecting they'd stop by after the ceremony for a quiet celebration. All of it gone, erased by 4 venom-laced words. Only the truly important people. Finally, Max glanced up and mumbled in a clearly rehearsed tone, "Mom, it was just a tiny ceremony. Just the 2 of us and some witnesses." But I knew the truth. The photos were all over social media. I saw Lena's parents posing with them, beaming, her siblings laughing with glasses of champagne raised. I saw the white gown Lena wore, the one I unknowingly helped pay for when I gave her $800 for personal expenses last month. I saw everything I was never meant to see. 7 days later, exactly 1 week after they had left me out of their wedding, my phone rang again. Lena's voice this time was not confident or smug. It was trembling, almost panicked. "Renate, the rent's overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, we're out. I think you forgot to send the money." I sat quietly for a moment, remembering all the times I rushed to the bank to make those transfers. All the times I canceled plans, skipped buying things for myself, stretched my meals to make sure they didn't go without. And now, after being completely excluded from one of the biggest moments of their lives, they called me again, as if nothing had changed. I inhaled deeply and said, calmly and clearly, "Lena, don't you remember? I only help important people." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat. For once, it wasn't me who was shaking. It was her. "Renate, I don't understand," she stammered. "We were always important to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies. Polished lies wrapped in sugar-sweet tones she only used when she needed something. The same voice she had used when asking for money. For the dress, the rings, the honeymoon. All things I had unknowingly funded, never realizing I'd never be part of the day they were meant for. For years, I had felt like I was tiptoeing on eggshells. Every word, every gesture, every gift was measured, hoping for a shred of gratitude or affection from my own child. I was the perfect mom, the generous mother-in-law, the quiet provider, the woman who stood silently while being treated like a ghost in their lives. But that phrase, "only the important people," woke something in me that had been buried for too long. I sat down later that night and did the math. Over the past 3 years, I had given them over $20,000. Rent, groceries, emergencies, shopping sprees, wedding costs, all taken from my savings, my retirement, the money my late husband left behind so I could live peacefully in my final years. And for what? To be discarded, like I was nothing, to be a stranger on my son's wedding day. That night, I cried, not tears of sorrow, but of rage, of pent-up hurt, of years spent being invisible. I cried, not just from sadness, but from years of being made to feel like my love was an inconvenience, my presence unwelcome, and my wallet the only thing of value I had to offer. I cried for the naive woman I had been, the mother who bent over backwards trying to be essential to people who clearly saw her as disposable. When morning came, something had shifted in me. It wasn't just the sting of rejection. It was something colder, heavier, a new kind of resolve. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at the familiar face looking back. The same tired eyes, the same lines etched by decades of quiet sacrifice. But there was something new in my reflection, a firmness, a steeliness that hadn't been there before. I went to the kitchen and made coffee like I had every morning for the past 40 years. But today, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder if Max had sent a message or worry if they needed anything. For the first time in ages, I was the first priority of my day. I sat at the dining table, the same table where I had once carefully budgeted for their bills, wrapped surprise gifts, and silently cried after being brushed off like a nuisance. But today, that table had a new purpose. I pulled out my checkbook and bank statements. I wanted to see it in black and white, just how deep I had dug into my life savings for people who couldn't even show me basic decency. $500 a month in rent for 36 months, $18,000 to groceries and essentials, about $200 monthly, $7,200 gifts for birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, at least $3,000, Lena's medical emergencies, $800, the car loan I was never repaid, $2,500, air conditioner repairs, $600, furniture for their living room, $1,200, total, $30,400, over $33,000, gone. Money from my pension, from my husband's inheritance, from the savings I'd built carefully over decades, all poured into a bottomless pit. The phone rang. Max's name lit up the screen. In the past, I would have jumped to answer, heart pounding, hoping for some apology, some recognition of the pain they had caused. But not today. I let it ring, once, twice, 3 times, then silence. 10 minutes later, it rang again, this time Lena. I ignored it too. Then came the message from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted it without a second thought. By 2 in the afternoon, I decided to take a walk. Not to the bank, or the pharmacy, or the grocery store. Not for errands. This walk was just for me. No purpose but freedom. I passed the neighborhood park where I used to bring Max when he was little. I remembered the sweet boy who used to hug me tight and say I was the best mom in the world. I wondered, when had that boy become a man who saw me as nothing more than a bank account? When did I begin to confuse affection with financial support? When did I convince myself that love had to be bought? Eventually, I found myself outside the bank. Inside, through the glass doors, I saw Mr. Klein, the branch manager. He gave me a warm smile and waved. He had seen me countless times over the years, always transferring money to Max and Lena's account, always draining mine to fill theirs. I walked in and headed straight to his office. "Mr. Klein," I said firmly, "I'd like to cancel the automatic transfers I have set up." He looked surprised. For 3 years, those payments had been as consistent as clockwork. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen?" His concern felt more genuine than anything I'd heard from my son in months. "Yes," I replied quietly. "What happened is I finally stopped pretending not to see. I asked him to cancel everything, and I requested full details on how to protect my accounts, how to make sure no one else could access my money again." While Mr. Klein worked on the cancellations, my phone buzzed nonstop. Max, then Lena, then Max again. It was as if they had a sixth sense. They could feel their safety net unraveling. I powered off my phone completely. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said gently as he handed me the final stack of papers. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but over the years I've seen how much you've given to your family. I just want to be sure no one is forcing you into this decision." His words struck a chord. A man who barely knew anything about me beyond my bank account transactions was showing me more sincere concern than my own son had in years. "No, Mr. Klein," I replied quietly. "There's no pressure. For the first time, I've just stopped pressuring myself." As I stepped out of the bank, I felt strangely weightless, like I had left a massive burden behind on Mr. Klein's desk. For the first time in what felt like forever, my money was mine again. No longer tied to people who saw me as a means, not a mother. At home, I sat and thought about all the things I had given up for Max and Lena. The vacations I never took because I was saving for their rent. The friendships I let fade because I was always on standby for their emergencies. The hobbies I gave up because every dollar I spent on myself felt like stealing from their future. Then I noticed the cars, 3 of them parked outside my house, Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. Through the window, I could see silhouettes moving inside my living room. My stomach dropped. They had keys. I had given them keys out of trust that one day they'd look after me the way I had always looked after them. I stood at the door, took a deep breath, and stepped into the next chapter of my life. Inside, I walked into a scene that's burned into my memory. Max sat on my couch with his head buried in his hands. Lena paced the room like a trapped animal, and a man I had never seen before, older, in a gray suit, was rifling through papers on my dining table. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice louder, firmer than I expected. They all froze and turned, startled, as if I were the uninvited guest in my own home. Lena spoke first, voice shaking with urgency I'd already heard too many times. "Renate, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher. He's from the legal team we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated her words back slowly, each syllable laced with disbelief. "What situation? I'm perfectly fine." Max finally lifted his head. His eyes, once innocent, now filled with financial anxiety, met mine. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you stopped the transfers, and Mr. Klein mentioned that you restricted access to your accounts. We don't understand what's going on." The man in the suit stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental health. They've asked me to evaluate the situation." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked straight over to the table and scooped up every paper he had been inspecting, my personal files. "You have no right to go through my private documents without permission," I said coldly. Max jumped in with the condescending tone I'd come to recognize, that practiced mix of fake concern and control. "Mom, we're just worried. Your behavior has been odd lately. First, cutting us off without explanation, then ignoring our calls. We think you might need to talk to someone." Lena walked over and reached for my hand, her voice syrupy, carefully rehearsed. "Renate, sweetheart, we know you're overwhelmed. It's understandable. Being alone at your age can affect your judgment. These kinds of episodes, well, confusion, is common in older adults. Confusion." The word rang like an alarm in my head. Now I saw their plan clearly. This wasn't about love or concern. This was about control. They were trying to have me declared mentally unfit so they could gain access to what I had cut off, my finances. The same woman who once looked me in the eyes and said I wasn't special enough to attend their wedding was now pretending I was too senile to manage my own money. "I am not confused," I said sharply, the firmness in my voice freezing them in place. "I see everything now, and I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Now, all of you need to leave. This is my home. You are not welcome here right now." Dr. Fisher tried to step in with that blandly professional tone lawyers use to make manipulation sound like reason. Let me know if you'd like me to continue from Dr. Fisher's response, or if you want this formatted for a story, script, voiceover, or narration. Also, if you're planning to post or publish this, I can combine all 3 rewritten parts into one cohesive document for you. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Fisher said calmly, as if rehearsed, "I understand this all feels overwhelming, but your children have the right to intervene if they suspect your capacity to manage finances has been compromised. They've provided documentation of some concerning behaviors." Concerning behaviors. The laugh that escaped my throat was raw, almost bitter. "Oh? Like what? Choosing to spend my money on myself? Deciding not to bankroll 2 grown adults who treat me like a nuisance unless they need something?" Lena jerked back like I'd slapped her. "We've never treated you badly," she snapped. "You're part of this family. Everything you have will come to us eventually anyway. We're just making things easier." There it was, the truth, stripped bare and shameless. In their minds, I was already dead. Not a mother, not a person, just an estate they were entitled to collect early. Whether I had 70 years left or 70 days, it didn't matter. I was nothing more than a walking, talking inconvenience with a bank account. "Out," I said, pointing to the door. "All of you, out of my house." Max stood up, his expression twisted into the same sulking glare he wore as a child when he didn't get his way. "Mom, come on. We can't just leave. We have bills, rent, car payments, that credit card you co-signed. You can't just cut us off overnight." "Can't I?" I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. "For years, I paid rent on an apartment I didn't live in. I stocked a fridge in a home where I wasn't welcome. I poured my savings into a life that had no space for me." Mr. Fisher calmly placed a folder on my table. "Mrs. Richter, we've drafted some documents that could help ease this transition. A temporary power of attorney, just until things stabilize. It would allow Max and Lena to manage your financial responsibilities for now." Without a glance, I picked up the folder and dropped it directly into the trash. "The only transition happening today is the one where you walk out that door." Lena burst into tears, not sorrowful ones, but frustrated, angry sobs. "You can't do this, Renate. We depended on you. We made plans based on your support. We have commitments. We bought things because we knew we could count on you." "Commitments you made with my money," I said coldly. "Not with my blessing, not with my happiness in mind, not with any care for my well-being, just the assumption that I would always be your safety net. And now that I've decided to reclaim what's mine, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs supervision?" Max stepped forward, attempting a softer tone. "Mom, we made mistakes. The wedding. It was complicated. Lena got anxious. I was under pressure. We can fix this. You just need to be reasonable again." "Reasonable," I repeated, the word like acid on my tongue. "Being reasonable means what exactly? Continuing to fund your lives while you shut me out? Swallowing the pain of being excluded from my only child's wedding and pretending it's fine because I'm the one who always has to be understanding?" Mr. Fisher began gathering his papers, his movements smooth and emotionless. Clearly, this wasn't the first time he'd seen a plan fall apart. "Mrs. Richter," he said flatly, "this may not be the end of it. Your family has legal options. If it's determined that your recent actions stem from cognitive decline, a court can assign guardianship." His words hit like a punch. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. It was a legal threat. They were seriously considering trying to have me declared mentally unfit just to regain access to my money. I stared directly into his eyes. "Mr. Fisher," I said steadily, "I suggest you do your due diligence before threatening a 71-year-old woman who has flawlessly managed her finances for 4 decades. A woman who raised her son alone after losing her husband, who paid off her mortgage, never missed a payment, and until last week was financially supporting 2 fully capable adults." Lena's crying stopped. She looked at me, not with sadness, not with remorse, but with a cold fury I hadn't seen before. The mask had dropped. "This isn't over, Renat," she hissed. "We have rights. We'll get a lawyer too." "By all means," I said calmly. "Hire whoever you like. Just make sure you're paying for it with your own money, because you're not getting another cent from me. My days of funding your entitlement are over." The 3 of them walked out slowly, their pride visibly bruised, the awkward shuffle of people unfamiliar with hearing the word no. Just before stepping outside, Max turned back one last time. "This won't end well for you, Mom," he said, voice cold and low. "You'll end up completely alone when you actually need someone." I looked at him, not with anger, but with a strange clarity that only comes after years of unspoken pain. "Max," I said quietly, "I'm already alone. The only difference now is that I've finally chosen it, instead of being left behind by people who claim to love me." I shut the door behind them, and for the first time in years my house was filled with the most precious sound in the world. Silence. Not the lonely kind, but the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket. The sound of freedom. That night, I didn't sleep much, not out of grief or anxiety, but from pure adrenaline. I lay in bed wide awake, my mind racing, not with fear, but with strategy. If Max and Lena wanted a war, fine, but it would be one fought with facts, not feelings. At dawn, I was already dressed and out the door. My first stop, the law office of Mr. Weber, an estate attorney I had worked with years ago when settling my late husband's affairs. Unlike Mr. Fisher, this man had a reputation for defending the rights of vulnerable seniors, and he knew what he was doing. After hearing my story, he sat back in his chair, folding his hands. "Mrs. Richter," he said slowly, "what your children attempted yesterday is sadly not uncommon. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a crime. The fact that they entered your home and examined your personal documents without permission, that's a violation as well." His words gave me a sense of calm and a bit of dread. Calm, because I finally had confirmation that I wasn't imagining any of this. Dread, because the situation was more serious than I had allowed myself to admit. "We need to document everything," he said. "Every dollar sent, every gift given, every time they pressured you for financial support. We'll also revise your will immediately to ensure they can't manipulate you again." For the next 3 hours, we combed through my financial records. When he saw the total, he gave a low whistle. $33,400 over 3 years, he said, shaking his head. "Mrs. Richter, with that money, you could have taken a cruise, bought a car, or lived the peaceful retirement you earned. Instead, you covered the lifestyle of 2 people who wouldn't even let you attend their wedding." I left Mr. Weber's office with a battle plan. Change every lock in my home. Install a full security system with cameras. No more surprise visits. open a new account at a bank Max and Lena didn't know existed, and finally, start living the life I had postponed for too long. Next stop, the hardware store. Mr. Summer, the owner, greeted me with his usual warmth. He'd known me for years, mostly from all the parts and tools I'd bought for Max and Lena's apartment repairs. "Mrs. Richter," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Another plumbing emergency with your son?" I smiled for the first time in days. "No, Mr. Summer. This time it's for my own house. I need to change every lock and make them high quality." He raised his eyebrows slightly, but asked no questions. As I picked out what I needed, his son Ethan, who installs security systems, happened to walk in. A stroke of luck. "Ethan," I said, "I want full surveillance, cameras, motion sensors, the works. Cost doesn't matter." While they got everything arranged for the next day's install, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I had blocked Lena and Max the day before, so I knew what this was. I answered anyway. "Renate, it's Lena. Please, don't hang up. Can we talk like adults for once?" "Then talk," I said flatly. "I know you're still upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and we weren't thinking clearly. We want to make it up to you." She paused, and then her voice took on that honeyed tone she used whenever she was trying to sell me something. "How about we have a special dinner together to celebrate the wedding? Just the three of us? We can cook at your place like we used to." The manipulation was so obvious I almost laughed out loud. "Lena," I said, "how much is the rent overdue?" Silence. I had hit the nerve. 2 months, she mumbled. $1,000 total, but I'm not calling just because of that, Renate, honestly." "We really miss you," Lena said, her voice oddly soft. "Do you miss me, or do you miss my money?" I asked flatly. There was a pause, and then, to my surprise, honesty. "Both," she admitted. "I won't lie, Renate. Yes, we need your help, but we also love you. You matter to us." "If I matter so much," I said calmly, "why wasn't I important enough to attend your wedding? Why is it that every time you call me it's about money, never about how I'm doing? When was the last time you asked if I was okay?" The silence that followed was answer enough. It had never happened. "Lena," I said, my voice firm but quiet, "I'll only say this once. For 3 years, you've treated me like a walking ATM with a heart attached. You used me when you needed something, ignored me when you didn't, humiliated me without remorse, and then dismissed me when I was no longer useful. Now that your lifeline is gone, you suddenly discover you love me?" "Renate, please," I cut her off. "There is no please anymore. You made your choice the day you decided I wasn't worthy of sharing your wedding day. Now I've made mine." And I hung up. I turned off my phone entirely. No more interruptions. It was my day of freedom, and I intended to enjoy every minute of it. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I walked into the beauty salon, a place that had become a distant memory, always postponed, because Max or Lena had another emergency. "Mrs. Richter," Cynthia, my longtime stylist, gasped when she saw me. "What a surprise. I thought we'd lost you forever." "I didn't forget you," I said with a warm smile. "I just forgot that I mattered too. I treated myself to everything: cut, color, manicure, pedicure. And for once, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt for spending money on myself." As Cynthia gently worked on my hair, she chatted about her life, her children, her future plans. It felt so refreshing. A simple human conversation that had nothing to do with Max and Lena's drama. When she was done, she stood back and smiled. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter," she said. "But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen?" Yes, I replied. I finally learned to say no. On the way back home, my heart fluttered briefly as I noticed a car parked in front of my house that I didn't recognize. My first thought, they're back. But as I approached, I saw an elderly woman seated quietly on my front steps. "Mrs. Richter?" she asked politely as I stepped out of my car. "Yes," I said. "Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years but never really talked. Yesterday, I heard raised voices from your home. I just wanted to check if everything's all right." Her sincerity touched something deep in me. Here was someone I barely knew, showing more concern than my own son ever had. "Please come in," I said. "I'll make some coffee and tell you a story you won't believe." Inside, I made us both coffee while telling her the full story. Everything, from the wedding to the confrontation to the threats. She listened quietly, occasionally nodding, eyes full of empathy. When I finished, she wiped a tear from her cheek. "Mrs. Richter," she said, "you did the right thing. I went through something almost identical with my daughter 5 years ago. I also thought it was my duty to support her adulthood. I was scared she wouldn't love me if I stopped." "What happened?" I asked gently. "I finally stopped giving, cold turkey. At first she lashed out, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel like a monster. But after about 6 months, she called and genuinely apologized. Today, we have a healthy relationship, based on respect, not transactions." Her words were like medicine, a mix of relief and hope. "Do you think Max and Lena might understand one day?" "Maybe," she said honestly. "Maybe not. But either way, that's not your responsibility anymore. Your only job now is to live your life." That night, I climbed into bed with a peace I hadn't known in years. For the first time in forever, I wasn't worrying about Max and Lena's rent. I wasn't stressing about their grocery list or their car payment. I wasn't shrinking myself to be their emergency fund. I was thinking about myself, my plans, my future. And I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that only comes when your soul finally stops fighting for space. The next morning, sharp at 8 a.m., Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived as promised. They got to work installing the new locks and full surveillance system. While they worked, my phone began ringing again. Unknown numbers, one after the other. Lena, of course, still trying from every possible line. But I had discovered a brand new skill, ignoring calls that didn't serve my peace. "Mrs. Richter," Ethan said, as he adjusted the last of the cameras, "this system will give you complete peace of mind. You'll be able to check who's at your door from your phone, even when you're not home. And if anyone tries to break in, the police are notified automatically." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing a security system not to guard against strangers, but to protect myself from my own son. But strangely, it didn't hurt the way it might have once. It wasn't emotional anymore. It was a practical decision, part of preserving my new life. While Ethan and Mr. Summer worked, I felt a sudden urge to reconnect with someone I had long pushed aside, my sister Diana in Chicago. We hadn't spoken in months. Back when we did, I always talked about Max and Lena. I painted glowing pictures of their lives, bragged about how much I had helped them, how proud I was to support them. But looking back, those conversations were never about family. They were financial reports disguised as updates. I dialed her number. "Renat?" Diana answered, surprised. "Oh my God, is it really you? How are you?" "I'm better than I've been in years," I said truthfully, "and I needed to call. I've come to my senses." I told her everything. The secret wedding, the cold confrontation, the lawyer, the money trail, the decision to finally cut them off. Diana listened quietly the entire time, and when I finished, her response wasn't what I expected. "Renate," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's about time. Every time we spoke, I wanted to scream. You talked about money like it was love, like if you gave them enough, they'd finally care." "What did you want to tell me?" I asked softly. She sighed. "That Max never talked about you with affection. Not once. Whenever I saw him, it was, 'My mom paid for this,' or 'My mom handled that,' but never, 'I love my mom,' or even, 'I miss her.' It was like you were a service, not a person." Her words were a slap, but a needed one, like a doctor cleaning an old wound. "And Lena," she continued, "she always spoke of you in the future tense. When Renate's gone, we'll remodel her house. When we inherit, we'll start the business. It was like you were a placeholder, just waiting to be removed." That hit me like cold water to the face. They hadn't just seen me as a bank. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and what they believed was already theirs. All the while I was sacrificing for them. They were planning their lives without me. After we hung up, I sat quietly in the kitchen, letting the truth sink in. I thought back to my late husband, the man who had truly loved me. I remembered raising Max alone after he died, believing every hug, every gift, every favor was building a bond. But now I saw it clearly. I had been nothing more than a $100,000 inconvenience. The doorbell rang. I glanced at my phone screen. Eleanor was outside, holding a mug in her hands. I opened the door, and she greeted me with a kind smile. "I thought you might need company today," she said, handing me the warm coffee. "After everything you shared yesterday." We sat in my living room. The comfort of another woman who understood, not just the situation, but the emotions behind it, was a gift I hadn't known I needed. Eleanor continued telling me parts of her own story. "You know," she said, "my daughter used the same phrases Lena used. You're like a second mom to me. We're special to you. Everything you have will be ours one day anyway." They rehearsed those lines. It's emotional manipulation 101. "You think there's a handbook?" I joked half-heartedly. She grinned. "Not officially, but it sure feels like they all read from the same script." Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. If she resists, question her mental health. We both laughed, a bitter, knowing laugh. It was equal parts relief and heartbreak, recognizing ourselves in those ridiculous chapters. "Did you ever feel guilty," I asked her, "for cutting them off?" "Every day for the first 3 months," she said without hesitation. But then I saw the change. My daughter got a second job. Her husband stopped golfing every weekend. They learned how to survive. And more importantly, they remembered that I'm a person, not a wallet. Her words stayed with me. Later that afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in far too long. I visited my husband's grave. For years, I'd made excuses not to go. Max or Lena always needed something. There was always an urgent reason to spend that taxi fare on their problems. But now, no more excuses. It was time to remember the man who had truly loved me, not for my money, not for my usefulness, but for me. The cemetery was quiet and beautiful, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but sacred. Robert's grave looked slightly neglected, a painful reminder of how long it had been since my last visit. I knelt beside his headstone and sat in the grass, running my fingers over his name carved into the stone. Then I spoke to him, as if he were still with me. "Robert, my love, I think I lost myself for a while." A breeze swept gently through the trees, and for a moment, I felt as if he were listening. "After you died, I poured everything I had into Max. I wanted to be the perfect mother, to make up for the fact that he didn't have you. But somewhere in the process, I forgot how to be myself. I paused, holding back tears. Our son, he's become someone I don't recognize. Or maybe he was always like this, and I just refused to see it. Lena, well, you know how she is. And the money you left to give me a peaceful retirement, I used it all taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I've learned. I cleaned the grave, pulled out the withered flowers, and replaced them with fresh ones. Then I sat there for another hour, just enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing back to put out fires for Max and Lena. I was simply present. But peace, as I was learning, didn't last long. When I returned home, I saw 3 cars parked outside again. My heart skipped, but this time I didn't panic. I was prepared. The security cameras showed Max, Lena, and 2 people I didn't recognize. They looked agitated, arguing and pointing toward the house. I didn't get out of the car. Instead, I dialed Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, they're back. Max and Lena, and they brought others. They're on my property. Stay in the car, Mrs. Richter, he said without hesitation. I'll be there immediately. I'm also calling the police. After yesterday, I filed for a temporary restraining order. They are not legally allowed to be near your home. Within minutes, Mr. Weber arrived, along with 2 police patrol cars. I watched from the car as the officer spoke with Max and Lena. Max gestured wildly. Lena cried again, but this time her tears didn't move me. One of the officers approached my window. Ma'am, you're safe to step out now. They'll be leaving shortly. I got out of the car calmly. Max shouted from the sidewalk. Mom, this is insane. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son. I looked at him, truly looked, and replied with a calm I hadn't known I possessed. Family doesn't threaten to have their mother declared mentally incompetent. Family doesn't break into her home, and family doesn't treat her like an ATM. From across the street, Lena screamed, You're going to pay us everything you owe us. We have bills. You co-signed things. You can't just abandon us. Mr. Weber stepped in. Mrs. Brooks, he said sternly, any further contact must go through my office, and I strongly recommend you consult an attorney before making any collection threats. My client has full documentation showing that every financial contribution she made over the last 3 years was voluntary. I watched as they drove away, defeated but clearly not done, and yet for the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt secure. I had legal protection. I had emotional support from Eleanor, and most importantly, I had absolute clarity about what was right. That night, Eleanor invited me over for dinner. Her daughter was visiting, and the 3 of us sat around the table sharing stories and laughing. I watched them, mother and daughter, and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, mutual respect. They asked about each other's lives. They listened. They laughed. And not once did her daughter ask for money. Later, as we were cleaning up, I confided in Eleanor. I always hoped for that with Max. I really did. She gave me a soft smile. And maybe you'll have it someday. But first, he needs to learn that you're a person deserving of respect, not a financial plan. That night, I went to bed, not in fear or sorrow, but with a strange new feeling, hope. The following days were quiet, peaceful even, but my cameras told me that peace was being watched. Max and Lena started driving past my house multiple times a day. Sometimes they slowed down, sometimes they parked across the street, but they never got out. It felt like they were studying my routine, waiting for an opportunity. Mr. Weber had warned me this might happen. Document every visit, he had advised. Every time they return after being warned, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. So I did. Each drive-by, Each parked car. I noted the time, date, and took screenshots from the cameras. What they thought was persistence was, in reality, evidence. Let them keep watching, because now I was ready. It was a calm Friday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, quietly sipping my coffee, enjoying the rare peace that had settled over my house. Then the doorbell rang. The security camera feed on my phone showed a well-dressed young woman with a folder in hand and a practiced professional smile. She looked too official for it to be a friendly visit. I knew immediately this wasn't social. "Good morning, Mrs. Renate Richter," she said as I opened the door. "I'm a social investigator with the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report suggesting that you may be in a high-risk situation, and I'm here to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated it. It was no longer just private lawyers and veiled threats. They had involved the government. They were trying to paint me as mentally unstable. "May I see your ID?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Of course." She held it up. It looked official. "I'm Mrs. Schmidt, social worker. May I come in to speak with you?" I let her in, knowing that refusing her entry would only work against me. But every instinct in my body was on high alert. She took a seat on the couch and opened a folder. "Mrs. Richter," she began, "we've received reports of significant changes in your financial behavior, that you've cut off communication with your family, and that you've displayed paranoid tendencies, such as installing excessive security systems. There are also claims that you've refused medical and legal assistance from your loved ones." Every sentence had been meticulously crafted to make me sound unhinged. I could almost hear Lena's voice in the phrasing. Her manipulative fingerprints were all over it. She always did know how to string words together to get what she wanted. "Miss Schmidt," I said, summoning every ounce of dignity I had, "I would like to call my lawyer before answering any questions." She smiled thinly. "Ma'am, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's just a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem to speak with me." There it was, that infuriating phrase, "if you have nothing to hide." That same twisted logic abusers and manipulators use to justify invasions of privacy. If you're innocent, why should you care? "No," I said firmly. "I'm calling my lawyer. You're welcome to wait or return another time. But I won't answer any questions without legal representation." I called Mr. Weber and, bless him, he was at my house in under 20 minutes. When he walked into the room and saw the social worker, his expression turned icy. "Miss Schmidt," he said, checking her credentials. "I hope you have a court order to be here. My client is under legal representation, and any unauthorized investigation without due cause borders on harassment." Mrs. Schmidt stiffened. Her tone shifted from assertive to defensive. "Sir, we've received reports from concerned family members. It's our duty to investigate any risks to a senior citizen's well-being." "What family?" Mr. Weber asked sharply. "The same family that tried to pressure her into signing a power of attorney behind closed doors? The same family that entered her home without permission, rifled through her private documents, and attempted to take control of her finances? The same family that excluded her from major life events while simultaneously living off her money?" He dropped a thick folder onto the table. "Here is complete documentation," he said coldly, "of the financial and emotional abuse my client has endured. $33,400 drained from her accounts in just 3 years. Systematic emotional blackmail, social exclusion, manipulative behavior. If anyone here needs investigating, it's not Mrs. Richter." Mrs. Schmidt flipped through the documents, visibly uncomfortable. It was obvious the narrative she had been fed didn't match the reality she was now seeing. After a long pause, she looked up at me. "Mrs. Richter, Can you explain why you abruptly cut off financial support to your son? I met her gaze squarely. Because I finally saw the truth, I said calmly. Because I realized I wasn't a mother to them. I was a bank account. Because I was tired of being used by people who saw me as an obstacle to their comfort. She blinked. But don't you feel it's your responsibility to help your family? That question infuriated me. My responsibility, I said sharply, was to raise my son until he was 18, to educate him, to love him, to give him the tools to become an independent man. Max is 35 years old, married, and entirely capable of earning his own living. Supporting him is not a responsibility, it's a choice, and I have chosen to stop. Mr. Weber stepped in again. Miss Schmidt, he said, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to rely on his 71-year-old mother for rent, groceries, credit card bills, and emotional validation, all while excluding her from his life? Mrs. Schmidt didn't respond right away, because there was nothing she could say. Mrs. Schmidt looked at me, her expression now far more thoughtful than when she'd walked through the door. Mrs. Richter, she asked after a moment, do you manage your own finances completely? I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax filings. Everything is current, organized, and in my name. She nodded and flipped through her notes. Do you live independently? I gestured around. As you can see, my home is clean. I maintain it myself. I drive my own car. I do my own shopping. I have healthy relationships with my neighbors. Are you currently on any medication? Just vitamins, occasionally aspirin. I don't have any chronic medical conditions. Mr. Weber added, as part of our legal proceedings, my client underwent a full medical evaluation just 2 weeks ago. She is in perfect mental and physical condition, with documentation to prove it. Mrs. Schmidt quietly closed her folder. Mrs. Richter, she said, based on this conversation and the documents I've reviewed, I see no indication that you're at risk or in need of any intervention. I will close this case. After she left, Mr. Weber and I sat in silence for a few moments. The quiet felt heavy. Renata, he said finally, this is going to escalate. Because they're desperate? Exactly. They've already crossed into dangerous legal territory. They're spending money they don't have, hiring professionals, manipulating systems, all to try and have you declared incompetent. The thought chilled me. Could they succeed? They could try, he said. It's an expensive and difficult case to win, but not impossible. If they find a sympathetic judge or a paid-off psychiatrist willing to testify that you're unfit, they could convince a court to assign a legal guardian to manage your estate. In other words, take control of my money. They'll frame it as concern, but yes, that's the goal. That afternoon, I called Diana. I needed to breathe out the weight of it all. After hearing everything, she said, Sister, do you realize how far they're willing to go for money? They're sacrificing family ties, reputations, and their own finances, all just to control your account again. Her words struck deep. There was no going back now. Max and Lena had revealed themselves fully. I had not lost a family. I had simply unmasked an illusion. I was never a cherished mother. I was a walking inheritance. Oddly, that realization didn't break me. It set me free. No more doubt, no more guilt, no more wondering if I was doing the right thing. They had made it clear. My well-being was worth less to them than my money. That evening, Eleanor came by with a surprise. I brought some friends, she said with a smile. They're from my garden club, women who've been through something like you. I welcomed them in. She introduced me to Maria, Carmen, Cynthia, who I already knew from the salon, and Alfreda, a sharp-witted woman in her 80s with clear eyes and a voice like firm velvet. Over dinner, we shared our stories. Maria had cut off her brother after years of being used as his emergency fund. Carmen had distanced herself from a daughter who only appeared when bills were due. Alfreda had rewritten her will when she overheard her grandchildren discussing her property, like it was a pending transaction. What hurts the most, I confessed, isn't losing the money. It's realizing I never had the love I thought I had. Alfreda reached across the table, her wrinkled hand warm and steady. "Renate," she said gently, "true love can't be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never love." Her words were balm to my wounded soul, the truth finally spoken aloud. "I've learned something," I told them. "Being surrounded by people who don't love you is lonelier than being alone. At least now, when I'm alone, I'm in good company." They all laughed and raised their glasses. We toasted to freedom, to wisdom earned the hard way, and to each other. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat outside in my garden. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Or maybe, for the first time in years, I was really looking. I was alone, completely. No financial obligations. No adult children waiting for their allowance. No calls filled with veiled guilt trips or financial emergencies. Just me and my life. And instead of terrifying me, that reality thrilled me. For the first time, I was truly free. I could travel. I could finally remodel the house the way I wanted. I could buy that cashmere coat I always said was too expensive. I could donate to causes that mattered. I could say yes and no without fear. I was no longer a mother bank or a backup plan. I was Renate Richter, 71 years old, fiercely independent, and finally the owner of her own life. I could finally invest in my own future instead of financing the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope. For the first time in years, I wanted to plan my life. A month after the psychiatrist's visit, I thought I had won the war. I settled into a beautiful routine, calm breakfasts with the newspaper, tending my garden, lunches with Eleanor or one of my new friends, and in the afternoons, I painted again, a passion I had abandoned long ago, swallowed by the chaos Max and Lena created as they drained me financially. But on a quiet Thursday morning, while I was painting delicate flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber arrived with a grim expression that made my blood run cold. "Renate, we need to talk," he said. "Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They're requesting that a legal guardian be assigned to you." The words landed like heavy stones. I knew it was possible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it terrifyingly real. "Does that mean they can take control of my money?" I asked, voice barely steady. "If a judge rules you unable to manage your affairs, yes, Max could be appointed your legal guardian, with full control over your finances." I sank heavily onto the sofa, feeling the weight of the deepest betrayal in my life. My own son was trying to declare me legally incompetent, so he could steal from me. "Mr. Weber, what evidence do they have? You've seen me. I am completely competent." He pulled out the papers. They have statements from 3 witnesses claiming erratic behavior, unpaid doctor's bills, medications you supposedly hoard without taking, all fabricated. That's a lie. I don't owe any doctor bills. I have no hidden medications. They also submitted a statement from Dr. Lehman, who claims you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation. They twist that into proof of mental decline. Their manipulation was diabolical. My instinct to protect myself, to refuse an unnecessary invasive exam, was twisted into proof I needed their protection. "Who are the witnesses?" I demanded. Mr. Weber scanned the documents. Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and someone who claims to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis, the neighbor across the street, had always disliked me because my friends sometimes parked in front of his house. Mr. Green was my pharmacist. But why would he betray me? "I need to speak with Mr. Green," I said. "Something's wrong." That afternoon, we went to the pharmacy. Mr. Green greeted me, surprised and nervous. "Mrs. Richter, it's good to see you. How are you?" I wasted no time. "I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with my medications. Is that true?" His face turned bright red. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago, worried about you. She said you were acting strangely." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, no prescriptions. But she insisted this showed neglect." Mr. Weber cut in. "Mr. Green, did you sign a paper?" "Yes. She brought a document saying I confirmed you had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for insurance. I didn't realize it was for a lawsuit." Lena's manipulation knew no bounds. "Mr. Green," I said, "I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying that I have no medication issues." "Of course, Mrs. Richter. I'm terribly sorry for the misunderstanding." Next, we went to confront Mr. Davis. He answered the door with obvious hostility. "What do you want, Mr. Davis?" Mr. Weber spoke calmly. "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "And you're right, I did," Mr. Davis sneered. "That woman is crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks." Mr. Weber remained calm. "Can you be more specific about these strange behaviors?" "She installed cameras like she's living in a war zone. Strangers are in and out of her house all the time, and I've seen her yelling at her family in the street." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Everything he described was true, yet completely distorted. The cameras were for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending myself from Max and Lena's invasions. "Mr. Davis," I said evenly, "do you know why I installed those cameras?" "No, and I don't care." "To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law, who broke into my house without permission and threatened me." He gave a cold, dismissive smirk. "That's exactly what a crazy person would say." It was useless. His statement wasn't based on truth, only on malicious assumptions. Reasoning with him would go nowhere. That evening, Mr. Weber and I regrouped to plan our next move. "Renate," he said firmly, "we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who specializes in mental capacity assessments. Her report will officially confirm your competence." Fear prickled in my chest. What if Max and Lena have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they've already decided to declare me incompetent? "Renate," he said gently but firmly, "the legal system isn't perfect, but it's not completely corrupt. We have solid evidence of your mental fitness and their financial motives. We will fight this." The next morning, I met Dr. Moore, a poised woman in her 50s with kind but piercing eyes. "Mrs. Richter," she said, "I'm going to ask you a series of questions and give you a few tests to evaluate your memory, reasoning, and decision-making. Take your time and answer honestly." For 2 hours, she guided me through cognitive puzzles, memory exercises, financial questions, and emotional assessments. I solved math problems, interpreted scenarios, and explained how I managed my investments and household. At the end, Dr. Moore smiled warmly. "Mrs. Richter, your results are well above average for your age. You are not only competent, but exceptionally sharp. Your cognitive health is excellent." Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. "Doctor," I asked quietly, "why would my own family do this?" She sighed. Based on everything you've told me, this is a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. Sadly, it's far more common than most people realize. Her words validated me, but they also underscored the grim reality. This lawsuit wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated attack. That afternoon, Eleanor gathered the garden club for an emergency meeting. As I explained the incompetence suit, outrage rippled around the room. "Renate will testify for you," Maria said without hesitation. "Absolutely," Cynthia added. "You're clearer and stronger than half the 40-year-olds I know." Elfrida, with her wise 80 years, clasped my hands. "My dear, greedy children have been trying to declare their parents insane for generations. But you have what many victims never had: documentation, legal counsel, and a circle of witnesses who've seen your strength with their own eyes." Their support wrapped around me like armor. "You know what the saddest part is?" I said, my voice trembling. "Max and Lena are destroying any chance of reconciliation. For money. Even if I were willing to forgive everything up to now, there's no coming back from this." "Maybe that's a blessing," Cynthia replied softly. "At least now you know exactly who they are, and you can protect yourself accordingly." That night, I cried for the first time since this nightmare began, not from fear, but from grief. Grief for the son I thought I had, grief for the dream of a loving family, grief for the illusion that unconditional love had ever been mutual. But beneath the tears, something unyielding began to rise, an iron determination. I would not let them strip me of my dignity, my freedom, or my future. 3 weeks later, the trial date arrived. I rose early, dressed in my sharpest black suit, and faced the mirror. Today wasn't only about proving my mental competence. Today was about defending my right to live as a free, self-respecting woman, worth more than the balance of any bank account. The war had officially begun, and I was ready. Mr. Weber arrived at 7 a.m., calm but focused. "Renate, remember, the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove you're incompetent. Our job is just to show you're not." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. And what if the judge is already biased? He shook his head. "Judge Miller has a reputation for fairness. I've researched his rulings. He doesn't automatically side with families. He's dedicated to protecting the rights of the elderly." At 9 a.m., we arrived at the courthouse. In the hallway, I spotted Max, dressed in a new suit, probably bought just for today, and Lena, clad in black as if attending a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral of what had once been our family. Our eyes met briefly. Max looked away immediately, but Lena held my gaze with a coldness that confirmed this was just business to her. No love, no remorse. Their lawyer was an older man, elegant and confident, the kind who's won cases like this before. When he gave his opening statement, the strategy was clear. Portray me as a confused old woman, manipulated by strangers, estranged from her loving family. "Your Honor," he intoned, "Mrs. Renate Richter has shown clear mental decline in recent months. She has cut off all financial support to her family without any rational explanation. She has installed unnecessary security systems, driven by paranoia, and has isolated herself from loved ones under the influence of neighbors and lawyers exploiting her vulnerability." Each word was a deliberate attack. My self-empowerment twisted into dementia, my independence branded as manipulation. Then came their witnesses. Lena was first, and her performance was Oscar-worthy. Tears, trembling voice, heartbroken expressions. "Your Honor," she said, voice cracking, "Renate has always been like a second mother to me. Watching her mental decline has been devastating. We only want her to get the care she needs. Lies wrapped in tears. But when Mr. Weber cross-examined her, cracks appeared. "Mrs. Schuster," he said gently, "when was the last time you called my client without asking for money?" She faltered. "Well, we always talked about many things. Can you give a specific date?" "I don't remember exact dates. Is it true you and your husband married without inviting my client?" "It was a very small ceremony." "And when my client asked about the wedding, you told her only special people were invited?" Lena's face flushed crimson. "Those words were taken out of context." "And what would be the right context to tell your mother-in-law she is not special?" Mr. Weber pressed. She had no answer. Max was next. Seeing my son take the stand, swear to tell the truth while clearly preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most painful moments of my life. The boy I raised alone, the one I gave everything to. "My mom has always been very generous," he testified. "But lately, she's become erratic and irrational. We believe she's being manipulated by people taking advantage of her." Mr. Weber's cross-examination was relentless. "Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the past 3 years?" "I don't know the exact amount." "Would $33,400 be about right?" "Maybe she's always been generous." "And how many times have you visited your mother without asking for money?" Silence. "Is it true that you and your wife broke into my client's house without permission and went through her private documents?" "We were worried about her." "Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney?" "We wanted to help her manage her finances." "And Mr. Richter, at 35 years old, do you really need your 71-year-old mother to help you pay rent?" Max had no dignified response. Then came Mr. Davis, the neighbor. He testified about my supposed erratic behavior, but when pressed, admitted he had never spoken to me directly. All his evidence was based on superficial observations and assumptions. Dr. Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo an evaluation was proof of mental decline, but Mr. Weber presented the documentation from my evaluation with Dr. Moore, which completely refuted those claims. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who explained how he had been tricked into signing a misleading statement about my medication purchases. Dr. Moore testified next, presenting the flawless results of my cognitive tests and confirming my excellent mental health. Mr. Summers from the hardware store spoke about my clear decision-making regarding financial matters, explaining how my choice to cancel automatic transfers was both rational and properly executed. Eleanor and my friends from the garden club testified to my clarity, vitality, and ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, it was my turn. I stood with dignity and walked to the witness stand, carrying the weight of 71 years of life, of wisdom earned through pain, and strength born from adversity. Mr. Weber guided me through my testimony, allowing me to tell my story. The $33,400 spent in 3 years, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the emotional manipulation, the invasion of my privacy, the legal threats. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Weber asked, "why did you decide to stop financial support for your son and daughter-in-law?" "Because I finally understood that what I was getting from them was not love," I answered clearly, my voice steady and strong. "It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I as a person was not. Do you regret your decision?" "I only regret that it took me so long to make it." Max's lawyer tried to paint me as confused during his cross-examination, but I answered every question with clarity and precision. When he implied my new friendships had manipulated me, I calmly explained that for the first time in years, I had relationships based on mutual respect, not financial interest. In his closing argument, Max's lawyer insisted I was a victim of external manipulation. But Mr. Weber's rebuttal was devastating. Your Honor, what we have here is not an incompetent old woman, but a woman who has found the strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no real medical evidence of incompetence. What they have shown is frustration because their source of income has decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her resources. Judge Miller retired to deliberate for 2 hours, hours that felt like years. When he returned, his expression was serious but resolute. After reviewing all the evidence, he began, it is obvious to this court that Mrs. Renaud Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, as painful as they may be for her family, are completely rational and within her rights. My heart raced. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence suggests this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for Mrs. Richter's well-being. The court denies the request for guardianship. I had won, not just the lawsuit, but my freedom, dignity, and right to live free from abuse by those who claim to love me. As we left the courthouse, I saw Max and Lena speaking angrily with their lawyer. Lena shot me a look filled with pure hatred before walking away. Max glanced back at me once, perhaps a flicker of regret, but it was already too late. That night, Eleanor hosted a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, freedom, and the sisterhood of strong women who support one another. Renate, Elfrida said softly, today you didn't just win a trial, you won back your life. She was right. For the first time in years, the future was mine. I could travel. I could love. I could create. I could live without fear, guilt, or manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment near the city center. I donated half of my money to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I began living the life I had always dreamed of. I traveled through Europe, took art classes, and joined volunteer groups that gave me a new sense of purpose. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I've heard from others that they had to move to a smaller apartment, and that Lena found a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity will teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. Some nights when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That woman is gone. In her place, someone has been born who understands a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renate. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories like this. Thank you in advance. And what about you? What would you do if you were in my place? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share them in the comments. I'm always curious about what you think, and don't forget to tell me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many more stories waiting to be told. With heartfelt greetings, until next time, M.